Hey everyone, we're going to get started in just a couple minutes, another 2 or 3 minutes. You are in the right place. Welcome to our first webinar, and just give us another minute or two. Hi everybody, and welcome to our webinar, College Just Ahead, and where do we go from here? First, want to thank everybody for taking time out of their lunch hour to join us on this. This is something that we're trying to do that we just feel is, let's get ourselves into 2018, 2019 here in order to get with the times, kind of. So I apologize for looking over multiple screens, but I'm just trying to keep everything together here for you. First thing I want to do is going to show you, if you're watching the YouTube feed here, that you now should be seeing my screen. And over here on the right-hand side, you'll see a chat window for Top Chat. You're probably going to want to change that to the live chat, and that'll bring things into chronological order for you. And ask some questions over here if you want. Some other folks from the guidance office are here, and if there's quick questions that they can answer in that section, they will. And if it's something that probably requires a little bit more in-depth explanation, we'll get to that at the end of the presentation. So without further ado, I'm going to switch you back over to sharing one of my screens. And here we go. Let's get this. Okay. College is just ahead, and where do we begin? Um, we like to say very popularly here in the guidance office that one size does not fit all when it comes to college. Um, the old cliche was it is a match to be made, not a prize to be won. And while that cliche itself may be a bit dated, it certainly does fit. And I'll talk a little bit more about what we mean by fit in a second. So let's give you the big picture scenario. And we presented this exact same thing to all the juniors last Thursday and Friday out of their social studies classes. And the goal was to provide them with this theoretical information here. And then at some point, whenever they're ready to meet with us, have an individual meeting with them and answer all of these theoretical questions that we're presenting today and create an individualized plan for each of them. That will allow you guys as a family to then take that information, take that plan, and visit as many places as we can between whenever that is and the start of school in September. And then in September, we will meet with them again in small groups and again with you as parents and say, here's the college process. Here is how you actually apply, and here's what will physically get it done. So basically, we would, for anybody who hasn't really thought about this at all, this is the time. You know, we always give the advice, to sophomore parents who are chomping at the bit to get going. We say, we need your children to come to school. We need them to get involved in something and get good grades. Outside of that, there seems to be a bit of a rush to accomplish everything. And one of the main themes that we spoke to the students about on Thursday and Friday was identifying a lot of the myths that exist in the college application process, because they have a lot of bad information, and most of it is propagated by each other. Somebody says something one time, and then that becomes gospel for whatever is seemingly out there. The most popular myth out there as it relates specifically to Montgomery right now is that, oh, we're blackballed at Stanford. Well, I'm very happy to report that when I first started here 12 years ago, we were blackballed at Middlebury, but that blackball is over, and now we've moved on to Stanford. So it's clearly not a situation where that exists at all. It's, the students are looking for explanations as to why they're not getting in. And in a situation like that, it's quite simple. Stanford is the most selective school on planet Earth. And when you have a clientele of applicants who are the most competitive on planet Earth, and you are based in Silicon Valley, you have the ability to be that selective. And it's not to say that our students are not exceptional, because they are. It's just the applicant pool is that difficult. So one of the things that we like to do is get started with some vocabulary. Here's a different list of all the different types of colleges. And one of the things that we always hear the students talking about is there's a misperception about what liberal arts college is for some reason. You often hear the term small attached to liberal arts college. And when we asked the students to define for us on Thursday and Friday what a liberal arts college was, we often got that answer. Well, it's a small school where you could take theater or drama. And they were surprised to learn that it was also Harvard, Penn State, the College of New Jersey, Rutgers are all liberal arts schools, meaning you can obviously take biology and math the same way you could take philosophy and psychology. Just offers a little bit of everything. We compared that to the specialized institutions like music conservatories or the Culinary Institute of America, things like that. So that cleared up one of their myths, certainly. So I want to spend a little bit of time on one of the things that is becoming more and more prevalent as the years go on, and that is the difference between early decision and early action. You're looking at a lot of different admissions vocabulary here on this screen, and schools are adding terms like restrictive early action in the last half decade. But again, the early decision versus early action situation is the most pressing. Early decision is a binding contract. The student agrees that if they are accepted to the college or university, that they will go. They sign a paper stating that. You sign a paper as parents stating that, as do I as the counselor. Early action is simply a non-binding agreement. It's like regular applications, but that happens usually in November. November 1st, November 15th, December 1st are usually the most common application deadlines for early action. So, what is the debate? The debate is formed by a question that we despise, and that is, which school do you think should be my early decision school, Mr. Glock? Well, I hate that question. We hate that question. And why do we hate that question? And the reason is because the implications of the statement is that there's an advantage to the student in the admissions process in terms of gaining admission to the school. And if there was a myth out there that was the most propagated and most false myth of early decision, it is that one. So, what do we want you as parents and the students to do? Because you are going to hear on college tours, we accept a much higher percentage of students in the early decision period compared to our overall admissions rate. And that is a fact. That happens. So, when you look at that on its face, you would say, well, okay, Mr. Glock, that doesn't jive with what you just told me, that there is no advantage there. Okay, so now as a smart consumer of college, you are going to hear that question from admissions representatives, and hopefully your child is going to raise their hand and not you, and they're going to say, what I hear you saying is that you lower the admissions standards during the early decision period. And that's a question that admissions counselors hate because the answer is obviously no. They do not lower the admissions requirements during the early period. So how in the world is it beneficial to the students to apply early decision in terms of an admissions strategy? It is not. So how do we reconcile some of that data regarding acceptance percentages? The fundamental question that you have to ask is, who else is applying during that early period? One thing we know as counselors, and this is information you may not have access to unless you were talking to us about it, is that by and large, the applicant pool for early decision at early decision institutions is one that is befitting of the admissions criteria. There are very few long shots that are applying in the early decision period that don't also have another characteristic surrounding their admissibility. So what do I mean by that? I mean recruited athletes, extreme legacies, meaning my grandfather's name is on the library, students who may otherwise not meet the normal admissions requirements of that school are applying in the early decision period. And the acceptance rate of those particular groups of individuals is 100%. Those are the kids who were definitely getting in. So when you combine recruited athletes, ultimate legacies, other special interests, does somebody need a tuba player from Iowa because ours just graduated? We're going to get that tuba player from Iowa, even if their GPA is a couple of points lower. That's another special interest. Let's look at a school like Princeton University because it's in our own backyard. If you are the son or the daughter of a teaching faculty member there and you want to go to Princeton, you're in. Those are students who apply in the early decision period. Their acceptance rate is 100%. So when you add up the groups of students with special interests who are all going to be 100% admissibility rates, and you add all of that up, it all adds up to a higher percentage of admission from that student population. So now of the non-special interest students, I will tell you with 100% certainty that all of the students who got in the early period were going to get in the regular period. Students who do not meet the criteria, who are not special interest students, and they're not getting in. It's just a fact of life. It is not to the admissibility advantage to apply early decision. I cannot state that any more strongly. Applying early decision on its face with academics alone is not an advantage for admission. So why is this being pushed at you? Because it will benefit, it's clearly going to benefit someone. So let's understand why, because we know that your children are millennials and they're always asking why. So it's important they understand why. Colleges and universities are attempting to control yield, which is to say the number of students who are actually going to attend their university next fall. So let's use some yield by the numbers here. We'll use Lehigh. Cost of attendance this year, 2018, $50,740. So hypothetically, and I don't know if this number is correct, I just picked this out of thin air. If they need 2,000 incoming freshmen to attain what they believe to be the freshman class that they want, and only 1,900 students say that they are coming, that means it's 100 students times $50,740, and they create about a $5 million deficit for themselves. Clearly not where they want to be. If they get more students who come than they were prepared to have, say it's 100 more, they now have to find 100 beds. Maybe they have to rent out 2 or 3 floors of a hotel for students that they were not expecting. Now that is also a deficit in money that they were not expecting and not something that they want. Please understand all of those factors as you guys enter the early decision and early action period. So, what are the reasons why our students are looking at any particular school? Student perception, and this was something that a slide that I added this morning to this PowerPoint because of the answers that we got on Thursday and Friday when we asked the students this question. We said, what do you think are the most important factors that you guys care about as you're searching for schools? And overwhelmingly, the first 2 answers throughout the 8 presentations that we gave was what reputation does the college have? And how strong is the program that I'm applying to? That is what they believe to be the most important things that they're going to care about when they get to college. And there's something that we know, and we understand that once they get there, they end up not caring about either of those things. What are the things that they do really care about? The top 2 by far. How big is the school and where is it in relation to my family unit? Size of the school is the thing that when we meet with the students in their individual sessions, they say they least care about. But we really know, because of the students who come back and talk to us, that say, I was not prepared for 450 kids in a classroom that was the size of the MPAC, taught by a teacher's assistant, and I really never went to the class, and I got a D. I'm lucky I passed. Now, for other students who are very self-motivated, who pride themselves on attending all of their classes because they want to hear it one time, could flourish in a situation like that. But what it comes down to when it comes to size is, how well do you know yourself as a student? And if you know you are not going to be the student who gets themselves out of bed every morning on your own, and doesn't care that the teacher doesn't take attendance, a bigger school could be for you. There's other size advantages to huge places. There's no hidden huge schools. The Penn States and the Ohio States, we've heard of all of those schools for a reason. They play big time athletics. You go to Happy Valley on a Saturday during football season, there's really nothing like it. It's just a different planet from what it's like there the rest of the year and the week. Location. Mr. Pogue, one of our other counselors, tells a great story, actually, because he's a New Jersey native, and like many of our students, sit in front of us now and say, I cannot wait to get as far away as possible. And we were sitting around having lunch one day, and he said to us, I don't really know that anyone takes into consideration the logistics of all of this. And I said, well, what do you mean? And he goes, I FedExed all of my stuff to San Diego when I went there, right? And I chuckled at that. And he said, no, really, I FedExed it there, and they lost a box. And you know what was in it? My comforter and my sheets. So I didn't have that. And my mom wasn't there to drive me to Target. So I said, oh. So that's a story that he shared in our small group with the students that got a couple of laughs, but I know it also got the kids thinking a little bit. So, if you're a family that where money could be an issue, can you afford the $600 flight across the country a couple of times a year? Is your child going to be able to come home for Thanksgiving? We're talking about real world scenarios here. So all things that we need to think about in addition to all of those other things, but size and location is certainly the thing that the students care most about when they get to school. Another question that we were asking them on Thursday and Friday was, who's been on visits, and people who had been to more than one school already as juniors. I said, well, what was something that didn't meet your expectations? And one of my students responded and said, well, I went to Sacred Heart and somewhere else, and I didn't like Sacred Heart because everything was right on top of each other. That was how I felt. And I said, well, surely you could have understood that from the website. And I got a cross-eyed look. Well, no, I didn't know that until I went there. And I said, well, you just made my point. A lot of our students will believe in their heart that because of how quote unquote prestigious a school is, well, it's UPenn. Of course I'm going to like it. Well, our response is, well, you're probably not going to like it if you don't really like living in the middle of the city. But these are factors that the students tend not to consider until they actually get to campus. All these places have very different feels, and the only true way to know whether the kids are going to feel comfortable there is to see it. And it's going to be a maddening experience for you as parents at some points, because you are going to drive sometimes for hours to a place, and you are going to get out of the car, and about 42 seconds later, your child is going to go, I hate it here. And you're going to go, why did we just drive 4 hours to get here? But that's part of the process. Better 4 hours now than a lot later. A lot of this, what do we do when we get there? We want you to take a tour. We want you to, ask the questions that you want to ask. And we know that you as parents are going to ask the highfalutin questions. You're going to, well, what's your internship rate? What's the, all the things that you care about because you want your kids to succeed and get jobs when they're done. Please encourage the kids to ask the questions that they care about. Stop not the tour guide and ask a student how the food is. See the freshman dorms, understanding, am I going to have to share a bathroom? Does it have air conditioning? Is it carpeted? What are classes like? These are the things that the kids really care about, and ultimately decide whether they're content or they're not when it comes to their attendance. Public schools versus private schools, it's hard to know what's public versus private until you really start looking around on the web. Public schools tend to be lower tuition in state. So there are 7 state public schools in New Jersey: Rutgers, the College of New Jersey, Ramapo, William Patterson, Montclair State, Rowan, Stockton. Those schools will have a lower cost of tuition for our in-state students than private schools will. If you want to go to a public school outside of New Jersey, the tuition will largely look the same to you as pretty much everywhere else around the country. The difference between public schools and private schools when it comes to what you are really going to care about is money. Private schools often have a lot of financial resources, and they can spread some of that wealth out for you. Let's use something else in our backyard, Rider. If you're applying to a private school and Rider accepts you, oftentimes you'll get a letter that says, congratulations, you're in. Here's $11,000 a year. So you're going to receive a $44,000 reward before you've even really done anything. So that sticker price, which may have looked like $50,000, really only looks like $39,000 annually. So the ultimate moral of the story is, when it comes to tuition in public schools versus private schools, is we don't want you to let the initial cost, the sticker price of college, if you will, dissuade the students from applying, because they may get that academic award in terms of merit that you didn't know you were going to get until the acceptance letter came. And also, we'll help the kids in terms of applying for scholarships. We virtually bombard them with scholarship opportunities as they go through their senior year. So we often talk about what we're looking for in colleges. What are colleges looking for in your students? We know that all of these things matter that are on this list, for sure. The second from the bottom, activities, special talents. If you are Zion Williamson, the star freshman at Duke basketball this year, you could probably put activities and special talents way at the top. But there's only one Zion Williamson in this country, and that's why that bullet point is second from the bottom. Because we know for a fact that the 3 most important aspects of evaluation for colleges are, in order: what classes did the students take and what grades did they get? What SAT and ACT scores do they have? And what is their overall GPA? And the reason why grade point average is third in that group is because we can make a pretty strong case that a student with a 94 or a 96 or is better, rather stronger than a student with a GPA of 96 because of the strength of the program that they're in. So I took great care in telling the students that on Thursday and Friday because I did not want them to hear, oh my goodness, I have never taken an honors or an AP class, and now I'm never going to get into college. That's what you're telling me. Because that's clearly not what we're saying. What we're talking about here is, what classes did I take where I could get an 88 to a 93? And if I took those classes and I achieved to that level, that is going to give me the most options for college. If you are taking honors and AP classes 3 and 4 a year and achieving grades in the 70s or very low 80s, I don't know that you've done yourself a fantastic service there, as opposed to maybe taking mostly college prep classes and only sprinkling in the honors or AP classes in the subject areas in which you are most strong. So um, it's still relevant for our current juniors because they have one more cycle of classes to pick, which will begin very early next month. So that is on the way up. This is something that we feel really strongly about here in Montgomery, and that is your children to take ownership of this process. We are not blind to the fact that families in our community will solicit the help of private college counselors, and many times parents will do a large share of work for the students and not with the students during this process. We're aware of that. We would love, in a perfect world scenario, if the students took advantage of doing all of this themselves. There's a couple of logistical reasons why. Number one, and please, as parents, take this to heart, the biggest disservice that you can do for your student in this entire process is allow either you, your spouse, or a college counselor to contact a college on the student's behalf. It is essentially sending up a red flare of that at the first sign of any kind of trouble or even a simple question, that the student is going to go run home looking for help from their parents rather than figuring out how to be self-sufficient and solve it themselves. Because again, this is a business, and colleges want to not only admit admissible people, but they want them to stay because they would also like your tuition to keep things moving as smoothly as possible. So we would like the students to be the ones questioning us at this point. When they have problems or they have questions, an email, stopping into us during study hall and lunch. That is how we want this to go. And the reason is because if the students are writing us emails that start to come off weirdly or poorly, we'll answer their questions certainly, but we're also going to guide them in how to correct those errors so that they're only making them on us and they're not making them during the college process when they're communicating with colleges. So talking about the standardized testing, SATs versus ACTs, which one is better? In an ideal world, SATs and ACTs are the same. The tests have kind of now morphed into a very, very close comparison with each other in terms of the format and the how you score on the tests. So it doesn't really matter which test your students want to take. We would love if they tried them both, if that is a financially feasible option for your family. An ideal time to take those tests would be maybe March of junior year for the SAT, April for the ACT. Decide which the student was more comfortable with or scored much better on. Maybe take it again in May of that year. If your student is a very high achieving student and they're going to be applying to one of the 40 or 45 or so colleges in the country who require those SAT 2 tests, June would be a good time to take those tests. The SAT 2s are subject area tests, Math 2, US history, biology, a foreign language. They are 1 hour long. You can take up to 3 in any individual sitting of the test. And again, the vast majority of our students will not need to take SAT 2s. The reason why we think June is a good time for that is because oftentimes the same students who are applying to these prestigious schools have already been in AP classes and they've studied for the AP test in those subject areas. So the June SAT 2 is an ideal time. They've already studied. And then lastly, there's test optional schools, meaning we don't need to take any test at all. If your child is a very poor test taker and you feel that testing is not an actual representative of the kind of student that they are, there's just a growing, by leaps and bounds, number of schools in the country that are test optional, that students can just say, all right, well, I don't even need to send anything. And that's great. So fairtest.org, by the way, is another place there that you can look to see that entire list of test optional schools. You register for the SAT test by going to collegeboard.org or actstudent.org, and that is how you will register. And we already got in through those subjects tests, test prep and coaching programs. Test prep and coaching programs are valuable resources if they are available to you in terms of financial need or financial access, I guess I would say. If you have a student who is very adept at self-timing out of a book for $5 on Amazon, then you have just saved hundreds of dollars on a prep class. But largely, we want the students to prep in some way. Montgomery offers free after-school SAT prep classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays all year long. The teachers will tailor a prep program for the students based on where they are whenever they enter the program. It is not a beginning and an ending in terms of dates. The students can come and go as they please. It is just like after-school help. And I'm here to tell you that it is largely unattended. And the reason is because, well, if it's free, how could it be any good? I can't stress enough to you that there's a flaw there in that thinking. Please take advantage if you can. Khan Academy is another resource for SAT prep that College Board has partnered with, and they do some really, really nice things for free online through their website. So that is kind of where we are as we got through the basics. Now, Naviance is going to be a tool that the students are going to use through the second half of their junior year and in through their senior year more than they had at any other point in their lives. It really just allows them to look at who they are, what are their grades, what are their scores, where do I fit in terms of this college search and college match. This is a screenshot of the Supermatch college search within Naviance. That's one way to search. The scattergrams are what we believe to be the most powerful tool that Naviance has. For those of you who have never seen the scattergrams, this screenshot is the counselor view of what a scattergram is. If you look, here the red X's are students from Montgomery High School only between 2015 and 2018 who have applied to the College of New Jersey. Every green box is a acceptance, every blue diamond is a deferral, and every red X is a rejection through those years only. This information exists for every school to which I believe it is at least 4 of our students have applied. And we set that number at 4, so this way we can remove some of the identifiers when we have low application numbers. We also have about 140 colleges who will come to our building and visit us during the fall. The list of the schools is in Naviance. It will be up for the students who are currently juniors, usually by the end of the summer, and they can register for as many of the schools that they're interested in as possible. Naviance will send them an automatic email reminding them about it, and then that serves as their pass to get out of class. It's basically an info session. It's not going to be the thing that gets you in or doesn't allow you admissibility to a college, but it really is a good opportunity to get some FaceTime with the college admissions rep and hear what the school has to say. Something that we take really seriously here at Montgomery, because we love to get college reps here on our campus because of just, number one, we want them to see, who we are, what we're about, how wonderful our campus is, and just how great our kids are. So please encourage the students to take advantage of those visits. Okay. Just some more helpful websites for the college search here. All of these things, I would say there's never one just gospel of college knowledge. Please diversify the search. Use Naviance as a local resource when it comes to where do I fit for Montgomery. Some of the rest of these websites will give you other bigger picture perspectives of the school, and then certainly visiting is the ultimate college piece of research that you can do as a family. So our final thoughts, or my final thoughts as it relates to right here, please, sit with your children. After they meet with us, see as many schools as you can. Visit and say to yourselves, well, what are the 10 schools, maybe 12 schools that we really think you might fit the best? And begin to rank those schools in terms of the interest of your students. If other people who have had children who've gone there, ask them what their experiences are. Oftentimes our kids ask their friends' siblings, well, why did you not like this school or that school? And that is the question we need asked, because to just say, well, that school stinks, our students would often say, well, like so-and-so told me that school stinks, so why would I go there? But oftentimes the reason why one student thought that they didn't like it might be the reason that another student really does enjoy that school. These intangible things really are a personal item, and we really want the kids to treat them that way. So that was essentially the kind of long and the short of everything we had. I was trying to keep it to a half hour. I was a little bit over that. See if I can get on this live chat. I have a couple of other folks here from the guidance office helping me. My live chat is not refreshing as I get there. Any questions that need answering at this point? You guys took care of everything? Nobody even asked any questions. Okay, well, let me back out of this and stop sharing my screen for a moment. So really want to thank everybody. If there's any last second questions, here, we'll still field them. If you want, we'll give you another minute or so. Clarification on early decision. The early decision, I'll just hit on it quickly, is a binding agreement in terms of you're applying, you are committing that if you are accepted, you are going to go. There's really not an incentive for colleges and universities to offer you financial aid at that point. There's only one real way to get out of an early decision agreement, and that is financial. And the students were kind of keen to that. They said, well, I can't afford to pay it, then I can get out of that agreement. And one of the things that I was, we were all pretty keen on telling them was, your family will fill out financial information, either the FAFSA, the CSS profile, whatever documentation the college or university is requiring to get insight into your family's financial situation. And they, meaning the college or university, is going to be the one who gets to make the decision about whether or not your family can afford it as it relates to that early decision agreement. Your assets are all taken into consideration as they look at that information. And they may look at it and say, well, we see that you own several pieces of real estate, and that's elective, and we understand that those assets are worth a certain amount of money, so we perceive that you can afford to come to Lehigh and pay that $50,000 full freight, and that's what we're going to need you to do. So they do get to do that. The clarification was on acceptance rate, is that the acceptance rate in the early decision period is much higher, and that is a lot of the time is due to the special interest students who are virtually guaranteed admission, the recruited athletes, the special interest in terms of ultimate legacies, students that the college is seeking out to apply. Those are the students who apply in the early decision period. And when you group all those students together who are at a 100% acceptance rate, because of the fact that the university is the one seeking them out, that is the main factor in raising admission percentages in the early decision period. The slides, yes, we should be able to share those slides. They'll be on the guidance website. That shouldn't be too difficult. Give me a second here to catch up on some of this stuff. Sure. Talking about elaborating on lower grades on honors and AP classes versus higher grades in college prep classes. Um, every couple of years, we're reminded by college admissions counselors, because of a personal situation, that they value what classes did you take and what grades did you get. And last year, I had a bit of a sobering reminder, on my own caseload, of a student who had very, very strong standardized testing scores, grades in the low 1500s on the SAT out of 1600. And the student did not get into a couple of schools that I said, wow, all right, I'm interested in, an explanation here, because uh, that test score certainly falls within their range of admissibility, and it would have been in their top 25% of students who are, um, applying. And the the conversation that I ended up having with the student admissions counselor there was, well, there was, all grades in the low 80s in these, and I apologize for the bell, all grades in the low 80s, and there was, a C in there as well, and the high standardized testing score didn't really match up with the grades that the student was getting in the classes. Why did they take all those honors and AP classes? That's a hard thing for colleges to kind of wrap their heads around sometimes. So I would encourage you to have a conversation with your child's counselor to create an individualized plan going forward when it comes to the classes that they're taking. There was what should be the criteria for early action? Early action, I'll take you at the literal word in terms of, and then I'll explain maybe if you meant early decision. Criteria for early action is just early application. It happens in October. You can apply to as many as you want. Just see if you fit. If the criteria for early decision, in an ideal world, we want you to be absolutely sure, 100%, that is my dream school. That is where I want to be. And from a financial perspective, if you are asked to pay full price as a family, either you have the ability to do that, or the student is prepared to take a loan to do that, because once you are admitted, the university is under no financial obligation to provide you with aid. Let's see. Difference between Supermatch and the Advanced College Search and Naviance. Honestly, there's I could get into the nitty gritty small specifics. I think you'll just see it's kind of like using Yahoo search or a Google search. It's not really that big a deal. Let's see. When will the counselors meet with our students about the college application process? That stuff is going to begin immediately. The students can voluntarily stop down during lunch or study hall. Some of us are a little more aggressive in seeking the students out than others. But please, if that's something that you would like to pursue sooner rather than later, shoot an email to your child's counselor. Let's see. Is there a limit set by the teachers on letters of recommendation? There can be, for sure. That is a purely personal preference by the teachers. Letter of recommendation writing is a really burdensome task for the teachers. So that could be a thing. There is no hard and fast rule about it from a district or a school perspective at all. So it certainly is personal to the teachers. Montgomery grades honors classes differently than other schools as it relates to grade point average, and do schools recognize that? The answer to that question is yes. And that is why we also do our best in providing all the information we can to the schools. On the student's transcript, we provide both a weighted and unweighted GPA. And a lot of the time, honestly, colleges will recalculate GPA only in core classes and throw out the GPAs that they're given from us and every other school, and just look at what classes did they take and what grades did the student get. There's not a list of that anywhere, unfortunately, but we know that is a reality based on the conversations that we have with admissions counselors. Okay. How do we get an unofficial copy of transcripts? That's actually, oh, I already got that one. Thank you, Mrs. Appel. Let's see, any other questions I missed in here? Can we discuss sports recruitment? I did miss that one. Does the counselor get involved? We can absolutely discuss it, and I am actually the person that discusses it with students on a real in-depth level. They should have a conversation with their counselor for sure. I am. Again, I'll wait for the bell. I am the NCAA coordinator for Montgomery, and I've just fallen into that role over the years. Not that big a deal. Happy to meet with the students and families to discuss, just what the realities are in terms of college recruitment, because we can gain some insight into the ways in which your children are being contacted by, coaches, and that will help us gauge real interest from the college or the student. Let's see. Community college. We did not discuss community college. However, it is a incredibly, remarkably viable option, both from a financial and opportunistic standpoint. And one of the other realities that we know about our student population is that the kids kind of look at college, community college, and go, but that's not for me. It's not what I want to do. There are huge financial incentives to our highest achieving students going to community college. It is a first 2 years to get core requirements out of the way, transfer often to a very high achieving college or university, get that undergraduate degree, and in honesty, that's the degree that the next set of circumstances is going to be based off of. So community college, our homeschool in Somerset County is Raritan Valley. Mercer County, oftentimes, depending on which side of town you live in, could be closer. It's over in West Windsor, and they have a really prestigious program academically in terms of the community college scene in New Jersey. So good options there. Will this recording be posted? Yes, it will. Beauties of YouTube. Now that we're into the the present day times, we're going to have this. We'll link it up. I'll try to embed it into the guidance website as well, so you can go back and take a look at it whenever you need to, if you want to sit and review it with your kids. Okay. Okay, so this is actually a really great question that I didn't address about student has an 80 average and a grade point average, and gets a 5 on an AP test. How does the college reconcile that? AP tests, AP scores are not an evaluative criteria for admission. So the colleges are sent AP scores in the summer after the students graduate and they're going to attend. And the reason why colleges care about AP scores is only to see if they're going to give your child college credit or not. It is not something they use to evaluate admission. So that's another common myth. And thank you for pointing that out, because I should have addressed that one earlier. For sure. Secretary can send out transcripts when a counselor is not available. Yeah, we actually have a pretty smooth system in terms of transcript requesting, and we will, in no uncertain terms, share that information with both the students and with you guys as parents in September of next year. And one day of sending a transcript is not going to make or break an admissibility decision. The answer to your question in an emergency situation is absolutely 100%. We recognize that this is a customer service industry. We can make that happen. Is it possible now to switch from AP to college prep? You got that one already. Thank you, Mrs. Appel. Anything else I missed as I'm scrolling through here? Say that again? Yeah, I mean, honestly, we are here to assist. Email us. We're happy to communicate as often as you guys need, both with your children and with you, to ensure that we have a really happy, successful, kind of process through this. We recognize that it is often very scary for families who have never gone through it, and certainly for students who have never gone through it. But I'm very confident in saying that there are things that we do very well here at Montgomery High School, and this is one of them. We will not allow anybody to slip through the cracks. We will spend the time that is needed to make sure that you all feel happy and secure in what you're doing in terms of this process, and that the plan is an appropriate one. So, which one? Okay, good. All right. With that, we're going to sign off. We'll get all the rest of this posted as soon as I can. And really want to thank everybody for watching our first ever webinar. Hopefully more soon. Thank you.